Hello and welcome to the CNBC Africa special. I'm Gugulethu Mfuphi, coming to you live from Lusaka, Zambia. Well, Africa is a continent which is rich in resources. And depending on how you view the continent's painful past, some might view this as a curse rather than a blessing. But the key question that we want to find out today is what is and what can African economies do to redirect their destinies by taking advantage of the commodities that they've been blessed with. Well, one such country is Zambia, and we're going to find out just exactly what this country's mining economy can do to help contribute to GDP growth overall in Zambia. Well, I'm not alone. I'm joined by my distinguished guests and panelists, as well as a live audience with Mr. Jackson Sikamo here to my left, the president of the Chamber of Mines of Zambia. In the middle, Dr. Mathias Mpande, economist and lecturer at the University of Zambia. And at the far end is Mr. Nathan Chishimba. He's the director of the Barrick Lumwana Mine. And again, our live audience from whom we'll be taking questions later on today. Dr. Mpande, if we get your opinion on the matter, privatization clearly does seem to be something that is working for the Zambian mining front. Are those sentiments that you agree with?
I wouldn't say it's working. It was intended to work. I was at the center of privatization as the deputy minister responsible for the mining industry between 1991 and 1994, when the crucial decisions to decide to privatize were done. And I think, given the background to the industry, Zambia and the privatization exercise which I proposed, which is eventually is what has happened despite the opposition from the president of the day and some other elements who wanted to continue with the status quo of one industry, one company, in particular Anglo-American corporation, who wanted to buy the whole industry back. We privatized to create competitiveness. That was the purpose. Two, we privatized so that never at all in the future of Zambia, one particular company can call shots and be instrumental in guiding social and economic policy. Eventually, we have created possibly the most competitive mining industry in the world, with over 28 mining companies operating in Zambia. But the intention was to create competition, to create competitive world-class facilities. That has not been attained, as Mr. Sikamo has said. The two important mining companies which were given the best assets, as far as I'm concerned, Konkola Copper Mines, which took over what was originally given to Anglo-American, were given Mchanga, which, in my word, is a cash cow on the mining industry, on the copper belt. They are not mining. They are basically doing leaching from dump sites and having acids and electrowinning and creating copper. And they also have the richest asset on the copper belt. Konkola area holds 50% of original copper belt deposits. It's a very rich deposit. The KCM has failed to be on top of the technology required to run a cash cow and develop a world-class mining industry.
So clearly that's where we've fallen short with regard to the overcapitalization of this cash cow instead of looking for new deposits like in the northwestern province. But I do understand that that's a fresh opportunity despite the economic the synergies that aren't there.
The fresh opportunities in northwestern province were not new in the sense of being new. They have been known since 1886. The first mine in actual fact to operate in Zambia is Kansanshi in 1886. Kansanshi has been worked on and off. Now, it is not even a copper mine. It is basically a gold mine. As you go deeper in Kansanshi, the deposit becomes polymetallic and the tonnage is yet unaccounted for. It is a very rich deposit. Second, it is sitting adjacent to the biggest copper deposit in the world, which is Lumwana. It's low grade, but technology is now available to mine and process even less richer deposits than Lumwana. But I just want to let the audience and everybody know that we are failing to benefit from our copper resources because we haven't realized how to benefit from rich endowed resources. You can only benefit from mining if there are two things that are in place. The economy in which you are operating has to be industrialized. Without an industrialized economy within the country, you cannot benefit from mining. Let me let you know that major constraints to Zambia benefiting from mining have been historical. We lack skills because of historical racial bias against giving skilled manpower to the Africans. That is historical. Two, we lack basic facilities. Copper production requires very low inputs. We lack power, we lack fluxes, we lack neutralizers, we lack chemicals just to collect minerals before we refine them. And we lack electricity. Three, we are not creating capital. If you have to benefit from an industry which is as rich and as good as mining, especially copper mining, you have to create capital from that resource base. And we have failed to create capital.
I want us to explore that further because it has recently been stated that Zambia has lost out to the DRC as the now #7 producer of copper in the world, and Zambia falling to #2 again against the DRC with regard to copper production on the continent. Nathan, you come from a policy background, so I'm sure you can step up on what Dr. Mpande has said with regard to where we're lacking from a policy perspective. And maybe let's start on the capital issue from a tax perspective, where we use that as a case in point.
I think the timeline that Jackson outlined was very telling, because at the time that the mines were being privatized, we did have a situation where investment had literally dried up. The country could not afford to put in the capital that was required. And what happened then is there was a step change in the policy to encourage new investment to come in. And on the back of that, you have the 10 billion investment that came into the country. And what permits investment to flow, really, is firstly the perception that the mineralization of the destination is conducive. Then from there, even if you had the best mineralization, you have to look at what kind of policy framework exists. Is it accommodating to new investment? Does it offer that enabling environment? And that's what we had, frankly, with the 1995 Mines Act. And that enabled a lot of new entrants to come in. And one key distinction between that period from 2000 to now is that, yes, we had privatization, which was the entrance of some of the newer players in the market. But we also started having greenfield projects, which is projects that actually start from bare ground. I attribute all that to the fact that the policies that were pursued were known, the risk perception was defined, and people had no fear whatsoever of coming here and fearing a change in goalposts. Those in basic language are the elements that build the confidence that brings in mining investment.
Just to follow up on that mining investment, so a lot of it is foreign direct investment, which means it comes from outside countries, $10 billion US. How do we protect against the exploitation of the Zambian mines, of the commodities itself, and even of Zambian employees against this overcapitalization of foreign direct investment? Jackson, if you can pick up on that.
I think the first point to look at, first of all, is the taxes that the mining industry has been paying into the treasury. If you look at the period from 1997 up to 2006, that's the period of the actual privatization taking place. And by 2000, all the companies had been privatized. you find that the contribution towards the overall taxes which were paid in the country were running less than 5% during that period, up to 2006. The taxes which are being paid now from 2006 have been coming up until last year, where we reached a level where the taxes are upwards of 30% of the total taxes which are paid. So it's a significant increase in the taxes which are actually going into the government coffers, because most of the capitalization which happened that time is now able to produce and be able to pay taxes into the government. So that is a lot of money which has been used to do development in other areas of the country or the economy. And that's a direct benefit from the $10 billion that we are talking about. And then, you know, apart from that, we've got the supply of goods and services to the mines. We've got the jobs which have been, direct jobs which have been created. Today we are talking about more than 75,000 jobs directly employed in the mining industry. That's quite a big number. Now, when you look at the people who are actually working, in terms of expatriates, out of that total number, we only have 1% as expatriates. In some other countries which are near to us, we're talking about 17% and upwards as expatriates into the mining industry. We can here in Zambia say that there is no job in the Zambian mining industry which has not been able to be done successfully by a Zambian. So we are able to actually run these industries. We may not have the numbers completely at any moment in time, but the skills are there, although in numbers we may lack one or two skills here and there. And the mining industry, together with the government and the local education institutions, have actually come together to come and work out a coordinated effort in developing skills for the mining industry.
But what about ownership, Jackson? In some countries like Zimbabwe, you have indigenization. Other countries, they have black economic empowerment. Is that something that we also need to be putting on the table?
I don't think so, because when you look at mining is an international business. And the type of capital we are talking about in these businesses is not small money. It's big money. You need international finance, international banks to get involved. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere. Who owns the mines, to me, is not a big issue, because at the end of the day, for example, the mining companies which are operating today, all the services that they are utilizing, they are actually using Zambian registered companies. Whether those companies are actually manufacturing here or not is another discussion. But they are using Zambian registered companies to supply goods and services. All that money is actually going into the economy. So all the money which they get for the metal that they sell has to come back here, and then they spend that money into the economy. So the more copper we produce, the more money we are going to get back into the country. So our discussion should be focused on increasing copper production, so that every ton of copper we increase, we get more money. We should not miss that fact. Anyone who is running an operation in the country, I know Dr. Mpande has alluded to some challenges that we've had in some companies. Mining is a difficult business. There will be challenges, but you'll be assured that in the mining industry, again, have professionals who are able to deal with those challenges. They may take a bit of time, but eventually the challenges will be dealt with, and the production levels will get to the levels which are acceptable. But at the same time, I need to mention that the cost competitiveness of the mines is important. This direct investment that we've had, people will look at the type of mineralization that we have, one, yes. Then they'll look at the economic environment that we are in. Then they'll look at the cost of doing business, the cost of production. As we speak today, in terms of copper production, Zambia is on the higher quartile in terms of costs, particularly the older mines, like the deep mines, the Konkala copper mines, Mpande copper mines. They are already producing at more than $7,000 per ton. I'm sure you know that the copper price is around the same level, so they're not making money. The other mines in the northwest, where they've got low grade, sometimes oxidic, their production costs are slightly lower, and they're able to make money. And if you look at the taxes, you see that the companies which are in tax-paying positions are paying significant amounts of taxes, to the extent that the overall tax that we are paying in this country is around 45%. Now, in the DRC, it's 25%. So if I'm an investor, I'm looking for an investment destination, I'll look at those two numbers and think very carefully.
Dr. Mpande, I'd like to get your views here before you go. Can we fix this? The ongoing energy costs, increased tax as well. It's not an easy environment to do business in at the moment.
I was supervising today, reading a master's thesis in mineral economics based on benefits from mining. I want to let the audience know that about 1977, I did a study similar to what this student did. The amount of retained money from the mining industry into the Zambian economy in 1977, when I did that study, was 11%, meaning that out of whatever you get from copper mining, only 11% was trickling in the Zambian economy. Today, that thesis says only 8% net revenue comes to the mining industry. Congo, which is DRC, when I did the study, was posting 16% retained value into the Congolese economy. It's increased to 19%.
How do we get Zambia on their level?
We can't get Zambia on that level and start increasing. As I said, we have to industrialize and we have to support the mining industry. The mining industry is importing things which can be produced in Zambia, like lime, Ndola, and that area around Ndola has the highest concentration of lime. But the mining companies are importing lime from as far as China, India, and South Africa. The mining companies are importing water-based flotation chemicals from Taiwan with only 1% active ingredients. All of it is water, with a very high damage to the road, rail network, for which they are not paying towing charges. It is the ordinary Zambians who are paying fuel levy who are maintaining the roads. It's the Zambian government that is taxing the average computer-based employees, pay as you earn, which is maintaining the roads the mining industry is damaging. You have to be on the Chingola, Solwezi Road to see the heavy damage to our roads. And it is really important that a policy environment can be created where you pay for what you consume. If you don't pay for what you consume, then you are a parasitical investor, which is the case in point. I would not argue for renationalization, but I want to argue for international responsibility of investors. It is not true, and I want to be very categorical, it's not true that it is incentives that attract investors. Worldwide, that premise has been discredited. It is resources and the quality of resources which attract mobile capital. And Zambia and Congo have the highest indices of high quality minerals. There is nowhere you get copper and cobalt to the quality that is available in Zambia and Congo. So anybody else who wants copper, anybody else who wants cobalt will come to Zambia and Congo.
So does it maybe call for policies then that need to be multi-pronged approach to hold these investors accountable?
Policy, if you have to have a policy which is going to be friendly to the country, you have to see to it that the policy grows 3 of the 4 important determinants to economic growth. You have to create quality manpower. 2, you have to have capital formation which can invest in infrastructure and utilities, which are tools for reducing and increasing productivity and improve the methods of technology and techniques of production. If you don't invest in that, you'll remain a parasitical economy which is really exporting to the benefit of outsiders. Today, Zambia has exported everything and it has not benefited very much.
So clearly we need to be learning from the mistakes of the past. But I'd like to cross to our audience now, where we're going to take a couple of questions. Anyone with a question, please put your hand up and wait for the mic to get to you. It is on its way. Please stand up, sir, introduce yourself, and you can direct your question. The microphone is on its way, sir.
My name is Kwalela Lamaswala. I'm the resident director for First Quantum Minerals. I'm also a director of Kansanshi Mining. I would like to correct two statements which were made by my cousin, Dr. Mpande. One, that Kansanshi is now principally a gold mine. Our facts are as follows. Copper sales account for about $1.4 billion in a year. Gold sales, $140 million. So gold is only 10% of total sales. So it's a very useful byproduct, very, very useful byproduct, because when we do our gold credits, it sort of reduces the overall cost of production. But it's not accurate to say Kansanshi is now principally a gold mine.
My name is Gilbert Temba. I am from Association of Zambian Mineral Exploration Companies. Very quick comments on some of the points made by the colleagues in the panel. Just as a matter of comparative interest, I think Dr. Mpande mentioned that in a study he undertook in 2008, the amount of income retained from mining in 2008 was 11% of Y. And then 2014, in this current study of his students, is 8% of maybe X. I would like to suggest that I think those figures must be compared in absolute terms, because I think 10 years ago or so, Zambia's total foreign exchange earnings were in the region of 4 billion or 5 billion. I think that figure has doubled today. Ironically, of those figures, the mining industry still contributes 80% of foreign exchange income into this country, while the non-traditional exports contribute 20%. So you can see the mining's contribution to the total economy in terms of actual cash has grown very significantly, while we try as a country to support non-traditional exports. So I would suggest that maybe those figures should be looked at in absolute terms and compared against economic growth as well as population growth and so on. Zambia is the most expensive place to do mining in Africa. I think I would be wrong if someone would, I would be happy if someone would say to me, there is another country elsewhere. Why do I say so? We are landlocked. If I was operating a mine in Durban, I would remove the internal cost of moving capital machinery from outside into Zambia, and equally, when I export my copper, I'll remove that landlocked cost. Just as a matter of interest, it costs, say, and for comparative purposes, $100 to move something from Japan to Durban. It costs another $200 to deliver it to Kitwe. Equally, in return, to move a ton of copper from here to the overseas markets, it costs in those proportions. So Zambia is a very, very expensive country to do it business in. And I think the mining industry, who are challenged by the markets where they sell their commodities, they have no control over pricing. They are competing with countries that are mining mainly on the sea coast and so on, like in Chile and so on. Now, also Dr. Mpande said that incentives have been demystified as a necessity to promote investment. I'm not too sure where that study comes from, but I think two things that attract investment in mining. It's true. One of them is the resource value. Secondly, is the policy framework in that country, which especially borders on fiscal policy. I've yet to find a country which has no incentives, may have the best resources, and yet attracts investment. For information, today, DRC is mining more copper. Congo has at the best rates, value of copper deposits for a long, long time. There was no investment until recently. Companies, I think like Glencore, have gone into Congo recently to invest. Why? Because of a changing political as well as policy environment. So I think that's very critical. Otherwise, Congo would have remained as a pariah in terms of investment. A quick comment on my brother, Mr. Chewe's issue of employment. I would like to give him the bad news for the future in mining. Mining must be internationally competitive. And the way the mining has been doing it is to mechanize. Zambia will not be spared. You are going to see a further decline in employment, and be ready for it, because it's the nature of mining. Mechanization is the only way they can cut costs, because labor costs increase tremendously. I used to work for the mining industry 20, 30 years ago, and I recall the kind of salaries miners are earning today far exceed even what government is paying their employees. And you know, government in Zambia is paying very highly. Now, mining industry begins to look at those costs and say, this is a devil they can do without it. Hence, mechanization. So I fear that you must look for quality jobs, fewer, because otherwise large numbers are not going to be sustainable. Also, when you talk about contract mining, it's just another way of employing labor. So if I were you, I would embrace the contract miners and make them your members. But I'm afraid long-term labor numbers will reduce in line with international practice.
I'd like to pick up on the first comment, Dr. Mpande. I think there's a lot for you to comment here on. I hope you prepared for it. Maybe the comments from your colleague in the industry regarding the Kancha mine, that it's not a gold mine.
This is a very contentious issue. And it is as contentious as what is in the public discussion. I created the Zambia Revenue Mining Tax Unit. And it is always in the press why some companies would wish to continue exporting concentrates. It is because of the weakness of the regulatory and tax regulations and export regulations. There was a presentation 2 weeks ago at Intercontinental by jointly Chamber of Mines, IMF, and World Bank, where under current arrangement, all you need is to say, I'm exporting a copper concentrate. And ZRA will not worry or even ask you what else is in the concentrate. I sampled Kansanshi as chief government mining engineer before it was relicensed to a company from which First Quantum bought the resource. It's a polymetallic and increasingly gold concentrate. But the First Quantum are exporting predominantly what they say is a copper concentrate. So all these other minerals, whether they are not copper or gold, it is in this discussion. Okay? And I have challenged First Quantum. It is currently the biggest and the most profitable mining operation. Why they wouldn't use $400 million, $500 million to do a smelter refinery and a precious metals plant, which at the time the copper precious metals plant in dollar was operating, only required $5 million. I think it's $20 million. If they could do a precious metals plant, they would recover not only gold, they would recover cobalt, they would recover selenium, and selenium is a very highly profitable metal.
I tell you what,
it is where we should be going. Two, I want to let my friend
Mr.
Temba let you know. When I say 11%, I mean net. There is this discussion, Professor Sasagan give us a lecture on what is the difference between gross domestic product and net national income. What I mean by net income is net income which goes into Zambian hands, Zambian treasury, and Zambians. The poor people of Solwezi are not getting that revenue that is being generated
Maybe it's time we go for a much-needed break, but when we do return, we'll check in with the Chamber of Mines to get their response onto the skills development with regard to mining productivity here in Zambia. Do stay tuned. A warm welcome back to the CNBC Africa Special, where we're taking a look at the contribution of mining in the Zambian economy to the overall economic development. Now, if you joined us for the first half, you might have noted the heated discussion that is underway, and we're still joined by our panelists. We have had to say goodbye to Dr. Mathias Mpande. He's an economist and lecturer at the University of Zambia. But now we are also joined by Bishop John MAMBO. He is representing civil society. We're still with Jackson Sikamo, President of the Chamber of Mines of Zambia, as well as Nathan Chishimba. He is the director at Barrick Lumwana Mine. But to pick up on some of the commentary, you want to respond to a burning question that we had with regard to brothers and sisters not getting enough jobs and staying in the contracting industry. Jackson, your response to Joseph?
Yeah, there are a couple of points I would like to get back to. One of them is the contractors, but firstly, I want to address the issue of concentrates export. I want to state here that none of our members are exporting concentrates as we speak. None of the mining companies are exporting any concentrates. However, if there is any concentrates to be exported, we do have a mechanism in place where a company which is producing concentrates actually gets credit for whatever valuable metals are contained in that concentrate. So we have local transactions happening right now in concentrates, and the companies which produce concentrates get credits for everything that's in the concentrate. The copper itself, the silver, the gold, the selenium, whatever is in there. There are contractual conditions which are put in place to ensure that beyond a certain level of content, you pay so much. So I just want to clear that point. But as we speak right now, none of our members are exporting concentrates outside this country.
The issue regarding jobs that you heard from Joseph?
The issue regarding jobs, what I would want to comment is that when we say contractors, we normally tend to think it's another group of people or another species of people. Contractors or direct employees, for us, they are all the same. It's very important that we ensure that those jobs, whether they are for contractors or direct, they are quality jobs. So what we need to do is that between us, the chamber, the union, we work together and ensure that whatever jobs we have are quality jobs, whether they are being supplied by contractors or whether they're being supplied by the mines. The usage of contractors is not a new phenomenon. Even during the time of the nationalized setup, we actually had companies which were set up under nationalized environment, which were nationalized themselves, but they were supplying contract labor to the mines. So it's not a new phenomenon as such. It's just one way of improving the efficiency of services that are supplied to the mines. But the bottom line is that between us, the employers and the unions, we must sit down together and ensure that whatever jobs we have in the mines are actually quality jobs.
Bishop MAMBO, you're sitting in a very hot seat, and maybe we will need to we need to get your comments on the developments regarding mining and the social economic responsibility that mining firms often have to the communities in which they work in. We hear of this talk regarding the contractors and developing skills and upping skills, even though there is a threat of technology and mechanization. But are mines on the right track with regard to their corporate social responsibility skills?
Difficult to answer that question with the Professor Sasa around. But speaking from outside this room, talking about the way we see mine, our position is that 50 years of independence, if Zambia was a human being, would have had now grandchildren, great-grandchildren, meaning that the mining sector, the way we know it in the past, things would have changed. The best towns in the past was in the mines. I was on the Copper Belt last week. But when you look at, of course, I've heard these big figures in terms of, export, payments and all that. But when you look at the living standard of a Zambian miner today, I'm not talking about the executive, because the executive, be it in South Africa, be it in Japan and all that, their salary makes them angels. They wouldn't have been Maracana if, they knew the suffering of the people. But if you go to the mines, of course, the hospitals are still there and all that. During the time when these mines were under government, of course, we were young, under General Junkuri, but you could tell that if you went to Mufurira, you would have said the better seat today. Now, we are hearing of mines today who are saying we need the 600 million VAT. The government, which is the Zambian people, myself, to pay the money that is in the government coffers. No explanation at all. Then you also ask yourself, apart from the miners, who audited their books? Then when you say 1% Zambian employers, what is the salary gap structure? And I sit in some boards and all that. When you look at an expatriate from India, with due respect, and compare to a Zambian graduate qualified, the gap is too wide. And these are some of the changes. And when you look at the mine contributing to the economy, not arguing from what they are saying, the vision is great and we can achieve a lot. But let me say that Zambians have not benefited a lot. I was a member of the ZPA. And I thought that when you give companies to private hands, what you expect is that incentive, the country will benefit more. UTH should not be what it is. But as a result of some policies Chief Dr. Mpande talked about, for some reason, whether we are relaxed or not, that's where the government should look at. The policy where the boardroom should not be colored by simply saying, well, we have the chairman of the board is a Zambian, that director there is a Zambian, but the COO still become an expatriate. That is not going to work for us. We need to revisit a situation whereby we look at our investment policy in the mines and all that. When you come to invest in Zambia, let Dr. Sasa with his expertise be part of the boardroom. Let that chief executive who's coming into Zambia report to a Zambia. He's come to invest in our country. Why do you still want to expect someone from outside to come and tell me what to do? And when he plays around figures, you and me don't, So I think there is a lot going in the mines. Good is there. I want to blame my brother here or there. I'm not here to argue. I'm simply saying we could achieve a lot. Mines are doing a lot, but the benefits becomes a problem.
But the question is how? How do we implement something like this? You've got two executives who come from, and maybe a room full as well of mining executives that maybe are the exception to the rule. But Nathan, how do we get this right? It's great to get this discussion going, but how do we implement such?
Yeah. Very, very interesting points have been raised, and this goes back to the earlier opening statement I made about stewardship of the mining sector. I think when you hear Dr. Mambo's argument,
no, not
Bishop Mambo's argument.
No, never.
He's rolled a lot of things into one. So in there I hear mines not doing enough, and generally it's hovering around service delivery, mentioning UTH, mentioning poverty and so on. I know there's a colleague in this room, Seforiano Banda. He comes from the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. And one of the things that that body does is to track revenue from collection point to the government. Unfortunately, most of the discussion we have in Zambia ends at the point of collection. You don't hear questions being addressed as to where is the money that's been collected going? Because that's the next critical question. If there are no medicines in UTH, but EITI reports so much has been paid, why don't we exercise our minds around that question? Because I think to just simply say people are poor in Zambia because of mines, it's a bit too broad brush. I think we need to focus on the tracking mechanisms. In Uganda, they do what they call public expenditure tracking surveys to actually track where government taxes go. And I think once we start getting our heads around how that those resources flow, maybe we'll then understand who we hold accountable at what point. Because yes, you can talk about infrastructure not being there, but mines are also a stakeholder in that. So we need to engage each other. The figures that we have here speak for themselves. We account for 90% of the exports. We account for 25% of government revenue. We account for 10% of gross domestic product. So those numbers are there. But what we need to then ask as a subsequent question is, what part of our stewardship of the mining sector is not working? It's not just a question to be answered by mines alone.
Does this mean that maybe there's a trust deficit from business, state, as well as labor?
Yeah, I think the point which Nathan is mentioned about EITI, Zambia became part of EITI and audits have been done to track what the mines are saying are paying into government, and then government also responding and saying what have the mines paid. And the latest results show that actually what the mines said they paid into government acknowledged a bit more than what the mines said they had actually paid. So the next question really should be, that revenue, what does it translate to into development into the country? Because as long as we don't answer that question, we will not be able to understand clearly how the revenues coming from the mining industry are supposed to impact the poverty levels in the country. I think that's very important. I think just to maybe follow on to one of the statements which was made, this was in relation to the VAT refunds. Bishop MAMBO referred to that. This VAT refunds issue is very important for us to deal with, because it's one of the things that is causing problems to the mining industry and also exporters in general in the country. The rule is meant to encourage export across the whole business landscape. Now, what has happened is that because of some of the rules which were put in, the VAT refunds have not been happening. Now, VAT, value added tax, it is a tax which is paid at the consumption point or in the area where consumption is happening. So if you're exporting from Zambia, that VAT should not be paid in Zambia. It must be paid where that export you are making is going to. I'll give you a very simple example. If you go to South Africa, those who have traveled, you go and buy your things from the supermarkets, you keep your invoice, the tax invoice, you are doing an export, you are coming back to Zambia. You go to the airport, they check your goods, they confirm that you've actually bought that item, you go and show that receipt together with your passport to show that you have actually left the country, and they pay you back your VAT, the refund. That's a VAT refund. So similarly in this country, if you export, that value added tax must be paid in the country where these items are going to. So the VAT that has been paid must be refunded by the Zambia Revenue Authority. That's the simple explanation to this issue. So what has happened is that the VAT refunds have not been happening, basically because of one of the rules which was brought in, which has become impractical to implement, where it's required that an additional condition is put where the exporter must confirm that these items have actually left the country and they've arrived at a destination and bring documents which will confirm that. A very difficult exercise, because particularly for the mining industry, we are dealing with international traders. And you find that before the metal reaches the final destination, it will change hands several times. So it is very important that this issue is addressed, the way it is, without shrouding into any other mysteries. The value-added tax must be refunded. That's the principle. Not just to the mining industry, to exporters in general, because whilst we are saying that mining is important, and mining is going to remain the engine of development for this country for a long time. We are talking 20, 30 years. Mining will still remain the engine which is going to power this economy. So we need to ensure that we nurture this business. But as we diversify the economy, we need to encourage export. How do we encourage export? We need to give them, these VAT refunds must be happening quickly so that their cash flows are maintained and they continue exporting and developing the economy. Because of the withholding of the refunds which have not been given back to the mining companies, in particular, we are facing cash flow challenges. Some of our members right now are starting to cut off some of their projects because the cash is held up. Some of the developmental projects which are supposed to be happening to enhance production, to improve efficiencies, are being cut back. Some of the corporate social responsibility obligations are having been to be stopped, which is a sad development. So it's very important that this VAT issue is dealt with the way it's supposed to be dealt with, so that the situation is normalized and we move on and keep on the focus of increasing production, because it's only through increased production that we are going to improve the economy of this country. For every ton of copper we increase production, it means more money for everybody.
I'd like to sidestep for a moment, because that brings me back to that discussion about mistrust, because it almost seems as though the mining companies want to track where their contribution to government, where that spending is going to, and on the other hand, the state wants to track where your money is going to with regard to the refund. And Nathan, I want to come to you to this, to emphasize that point just a little bit further. Your liaisons with the state, your liaisons with labor, are you finding that there is more conduciveness, more people are coming to the party, and it's not just about communicating and saying these things, but finding the appropriate policies to put in place to benefit?
Well, this is one of the reasons why we commissioned an independent study to just bring out some of those issues as to how each player in the whole setup works. And the ICMM report, which was launched very recently and contains a very big wealth of information, is meant to be that objective basis on which you can then say this is not happening. And if you go into that report, we don't come out smelling of roses. Actually, there are some weaknesses in the mining sector that have been mentioned. But more importantly, what it has shown is that there's a very big basis for partnership and for mutual dialogue, not dialogue of the deaf, where I believe my point is right and I keep talking at you without actually looking at what your point of view is. That would be the best starting point. And you correctly mentioned the issue of trust. And normally mistrust arises when either there's lack of information or there's willful manipulation of information to portray a different picture than what is really happening. So we have to address both those angles and make sure when we're discussing around facts. If we're discussing employment numbers, we're discussing things that actually are there. If we're discussing production costs, we demonstrate factually that this is what it is. And then you can differ on the principles of how everything comes together. But the issue of trust, partnership, is very important. And it's very important that all stakeholders actually take a step back. I'd advise the first starting point is you look through this ICMM report. It provides some very, very incisive insight into how the sector is operating at the moment.
Bishop MAMBO, just to come to you before we take questions from the floor, if we look at Zambia's competitiveness, we've mentioned the numbers. We've heard them, the economic contribution to GDP, almost 80%. We've heard about the investment of up to $10 billion US, but unfortunately it's not winning in the ranks. It is slipping down substantially due to the increased cost of productivity. Do you think that Zambia is losing its rightful position in being one of the shining stars on the continent with regard to mining?
The good thing about Zambia is that we're a very peaceful country. We're a God-fearing country. But 50 years down the road, fooling around the minds of people, you are sitting on a time bomb. When you don't listen to what Dr. Mpande or Chief Mpande is saying, being a mining engineer, and several graduates have graduated from our university, roaming the streets. Some of them cannot get jobs in the mine because the person that is prepared to go to the mine is sent by the big brother somewhere. These are now analyzing, coming to me as a layperson, as a parent, to say, this country, we are being cheated, we can do better. Now, what he's saying, I have no argue with that. All I'm saying is that we are no longer a country that people are not knowledgeable. Our own children, being taught by Professor Sasa, They are coming to us and say, no, 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 we can do better than this. And not only that, we are not an island. Though we no longer have an airline, but daily our flights are loaded to South Africa. And they are comparing. And the South Africans are talking to say, we need more. But is South Africa not part of Africa? These borders were other. So what I'm saying is that we have the riches. The mines can do more. Why don't we implement what Dr. Mpande said? If it's equipment that we need, then let's get those equipment. But for now, for me as a layperson, I would say, outside there, we are now beginning to talk. When you say civil society, you're talking about a person on the street, the church, and all that. They are now beginning to say that 50 years down the road, 24 October 2014, we are opening a new page. We have a new beginning. Let the mines set up. Let also the government think of us to think of divesting the economy. Because agriculture is another something that can give. We keep on singing about the mines, but we have not done so much. All we are saying is that the mines have been our resources ever since I was born. For example, when I went to international school, who paid for me? It was Copper Company Education Fund. Minister was Arthur Wheeler. My parents didn't have money. The same mines. Look around now. There's no longer Copper Company Education. There is no bursary. It all died a natural death. In between. But in those days, once you are brilliant, you have a bit of a brain and all that, the broken English that is spoken, the Bishop MAMBO that you know of, it was paid by the mines through Copper Company Education Fund. After we were big minister. All those went under, meaning that our parents that initiated these programs, taking over from our colonial masters, they meant that the brother here must add more value, my brother, and they must take a stand. They should not wait for us until we have a program and all that. No. It is now that those that are graduating from the university, our children, are saying you are going to go to the grave without benefiting from this mine. They can do more than they are doing. We're not blaming them, but it's intellectuals. Dr. Mpande is lecturing, and he comes out and says, and he was a minister, and he did write the policy, but now he's forgotten. Then you come out, you want to tell us and say, okay, VAT is so much, and we don't even know who audited it and so forth. That's why you hear people outside now beginning to talk, and they are beginning to say, but who is doing this in the mine and all that? Are they because what I heard from Dr. Mpande is that if you are a Zambian, you die a natural death in the mine. The majority of suppliers are Afrikaners, coming with shorts from South Africa. The following day, they have got better suits than us. Where are Zambians? So these are things that General Jinkuli, being the chairman and all that, should work on. And take note that Zambians are now demanding to say things must change. You can't have a scenario whereby we all know that our relatives can't get jobs, because when I become a supplier, the first thing is I must convince immigration to bring people who are not qualified. Because of poverty, a person will sign and say, this is an engineer, when he doesn't, then we cannot get the results that Dr. Mpande was talking about.
Well, Jackson, you want to interject there?
Yeah, I think I just want to, first of all, reassure Bishop MAMBO that in terms of training, each and every mining company, as we speak right now, has got very elaborate training programs. They've got sponsorships, both locally and outside the country. So there are various people who are, once they satisfy certain criteria, they are sponsored. Some of our members, where they are supporting all the schools surrounding them, primary schools and secondary schools. So in terms of education, the mining companies are actually doing quite a lot, but I think what would be important would be for Bishop MAMBO to take a chance and then go and physically see for himself. That's one. Secondly, I did mention that we've now taken a coordinated approach as far as skills development is concerned. ZAMSET, yeah. So this is going to help us to actually move the skills development process to another level. And I'm hoping that you are going to get support from all the stakeholders. Further to that, I also want to reassure him that this issue of suppliers coming from South Africa, I apart from being president of the Chamber of Mines, I am running a mine. I'm a Zambian. I'm running a mine. I'm a chief executive of a mine in Zambia. Fully mechanized, high tech. We're using remote control loaders underground, you know, and all the labor force. I think we've only got 3 expatriates. Okay, everybody's Zambian. Most of the contractors we have are Zambian-owned companies which are supplying services to the mine. That's just an example. I know we can go into the other mines and be able to give that. So I want to reassure him that this misconception that there are South Africans coming in shorts to work on the mines. We won't allow them. We won't even allow them to enter the mine because wearing shorts is unsafe. So that is not a true state of affairs. But I think it's important that our colleagues in civil society, when they hear that there is this issue, they are free to come to the mine anytime to come and verify, to come and see for themselves. They are free anytime to come.
Are you inviting the bishop to visit your mine?
Well, he can come even tomorrow. We can come and give him a tour of the mine. He can talk to the employees.
Just no shorts?
No shorts. You know, we'll give him the PPE that is required for him to enter the mine. We are inviting any interested party, any stakeholder, to come and see for themselves what is going on in the mines. There's a lot of development that is taking place. Although we are saying we've got a shortage of skills, you find young ladies now, they are working underground as mining engineers, not as loader operators. So all these things are happening, but when you're in Lusaka and you're reading newspapers, you won't be able to appreciate this. Come to the mines.
I think we can close off by definitely closing off on a positive note that things are changing. I'm sure in the 51st year we'll see the developments and the fruits of your labor. But thank you so much to everyone for joining us. We'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize the presence of the Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Security, the Honorable Rayford Mbulu. Thank you so much, sir. Well, that's where we leave this very interesting discussion for today. I'd like to thank my panelists, starting off with Mr. Jackson Sikamo. He's the president of the Chamber of Mines in Zambia. In the middle, Bishop John MAMBO, representing civil society. And to the end there, Mr. Nathan Chishimba, director of Barrick Lumwana Mine. And not forgetting Dr. Mathias Mpande, who is a lecturer at the university. Chief Mpande, there we go. I've been corrected, who is representing the University of Zambia. And not forgetting our wonderful audience for also participating with us in this discussion. Certainly, things are changing in the mining landscape of Zambia. Till we meet again, I'm Gugulethu Mfuphi for CNBC Africa.